I'm Kimberly Bennett, 33, and I'm sitting in my sister's restaurant on its opening night. The dining room hums as Emma, my sister, lifts a glass. Mom and Dad beam with pride at the front table while a food writer and the lead investor lean in for the toast. The door swings open and two health inspectors step inside with clipboards. The head chef freezes at the pass where unlabeled containers sit under the lights. A bright notice goes on the door, 13 health violations. Phones rise to record the embarrassment. I set my business cards on the linen tablecloth. I meet Emma's eyes and keep my face calm because this silence is exactly when I plan to start speaking. Before I unpack how I engineered tonight's takedown, tell me where you're listening from. Drop your city in the comments, subscribe for more gripping revenge stories, and switch on notifications so you never miss the next story. I was not born loud, I was born steady. When I think about how this really started, I do not picture the restaurant or the bright notice on the door or Emma in a white dress with a glass in her hand. I picture a chipped blue bowl on our kitchen table when we were kids. I am 10, Emma is 13. Mom tells stories that curl around the room like steam. Dad nods along with a small smile, glad to have a happy table. That night, Mom says a neighbor loved her potato salad. Emma jumps in and adds shine and drama. She says the neighbor begged for the recipe and clapped in the driveway. None of that happened. I know because I stood there with mayonnaise on my fingers and the blue bowl in my hands. No one lies on purpose, I told myself then. People just prefer a brighter light. The bright light rarely points at the person holding the bowl. Cooking felt fair to me even when people did not. A sauce thickens if you keep whisking. Bread rises if you feed it and wait. If you salt water, pasta tastes like something. I loved that I could make a small, repeatable miracle and prove it by serving it. My first recipe was tiny. I sliced peaches, sprinkled sugar, and slid them under the heat so the top went glassy. When you tap it with a spoon, it cracks like thin ice. I wrote the idea in a spiral notebook and drew a little peach with a smile next to it. Emma said the name out loud the next day. She said it in her voice as if she had dreamed it on her own. I said nothing because we were girls and it was summer and silence felt easier than a fight. By high school, our roles were set. Emma hosted, I built. She chose the plates and the playlist, I wrote the prep list and tested the ratios. She stood under the light, I stood by the stove. When guests arrived, Mom said, "We are Team Bennett," and Dad raised his glass. Emma took a bow like a one-person parade. I did not mind cooking for people. I minded that my part disappeared as soon as the story started. I would hand over a plate and watch my name fall off the edge like a crumb. After a while, I stopped trying to catch it. I started to keep notebooks instead. I learned to write the date at the top of the page and where an idea came from, even if the source was small. Saw a woman sprinkle sugar on grapefruit. Tried it on peaches, better, little facts like nails and wood. College added distance but not change. I went to a state school and worked in a campus dining hall. I learned how to plan for 100 people and how to label containers so anyone could read them. I learned that a clean label is a promise. It says, someone is paying attention. Emma moved to the city and worked in the front of a restaurant greeting guests. On the phone, she told me who came in and what they wore. I told her how to keep a stock from turning cloudy. When we were both home for the summer, she talked me into small pop-ups in our apartment. She posted pictures. I built the menu and the costs. We made barely enough to cover groceries, but the room loved the show. The show had 1 star and it was not the person at the stove. People love a story to go with a dish. So do I. I name a dish so my own hands will remember it. I called those noodles brown butter hiss because of the sound they make in the pan. I called the peach dessert campfire crackle because of how the top snaps under a spoon. I tied recipes to little pieces of my life. Emma learned the names and the stories and said them in her voice as if she had lived them. She would say, "In my grandmother's kitchen," and I would think, we shared that kitchen. I stood by the stove while you stood in the doorway. I learned to stop expecting the room to sort that out for me. The first time the theft felt like more than a bad habit was a dinner for Mrs. Patel down the street. She is kind and direct. She asked for lemon herb chicken, potatoes, and the peach dessert. Emma said she would handle the contract and the payment. I said yes because I wanted to cook for someone who deserved care. During the dinner, Emma stood near the head of the table and told my story about testing the lemon and the heat. She said the phrase I had written in my notebook, "Let the chicken rest while the herbs wake up in the pan." I looked at Mrs. Patel to see if she heard the wrongness. She was busy being a good host. Later, when she walked me to the door, she thanked me for the food and said, "You should put your name on your work." She did not raise her voice. She did not call anyone out. She just looked at me like she saw me fully. I went home with clean pans and a hot face. I found a job at a small cafe that let me design a breakfast menu. The owner was a woman who looked right at the work. She did not miss a detail. She taught me that checklists are only alive when you use them and that a label is not a scrap of tape, it is a promise to the person who eats. She said, "Make the care visible." I began to shape my habits so other people could see them. I kept my binder. I saved versions of my notes. I learned to take a photo of the stove clock next to a tray so the time lived in the picture. That was not about drama, it was about order. It felt good. It felt like stepping from a dark hallway into light 1 inch at a time. Emma watched my progress and learned the wrong lesson. She learned that my work could become her show if she stood at the microphone first. When she told me she had investors for a restaurant, I heard every old pattern move toward a bigger room. Bigger room, bigger stakes, same rules unless I changed them. My first thought was to sit her down and say, "This is mine." My second thought was the better one. She had never heard me when I spoke directly. She only ever heard the room. So I chose a different plan. I would choose the room. The insult that set the clock came on a gray afternoon. The light in the kitchen was the color of dish water. I had a tray of test cookies cooling on a rack. I was still wearing an apron. Emma slid her phone across my notes and took a photo. She did not ask. She said, "Your recipes are trash," with a laugh that invited Mom and Dad to laugh too. Mom said, "Girls," in the voice that wants peace at any price. Dad said, "Be nice," without looking up from the paper. I felt heat rise in my face and stop at my eyes. I did not raise my voice. I did not explain. I picked up a pen and wrote a date in the corner of the page. That was the day I chose the stage and the lights. If that sounds cold, maybe it is. I do not want anyone to suffer. I want the truth to stand in daylight once and clean. My rule became simple. Do not argue with people who need the room to decide. Choose the room and the time. I told myself I would wait until Emma put the theft on a stage and then I would pick up the curtain. I did not picture shouting. I pictured a calm hand turning on a light switch. I pictured proof arranged so simply that even the loudest mouth would run out of words before the page ran out of facts. It felt like the right kind of quiet power. Emma started calling the restaurant a family dream. She said, "We are going to put our name on a sign." She meant her name. She asked me to help with testing because I had a knack for making things work. She sent me a list of dishes. Half were mine, the other half were mine with a coat of different words. I said yes to testing. I did not say yes to disappearing. Those are not the same thing. I started a notebook only for the project. I kept the dates. I wrote who was in the room when we tried a new sauce. I printed some pages and put them in the binder. It felt like laying bricks. I thought about what it would mean to fight in the old way. I would challenge Emma. She would talk over me. Mom would say, "Do not ruin the mood." Dad would say, "Be a team player." Then, on opening night, Emma would stand in a bright room and present my work as hers. People would clap. The night would belong to the lie. I would go home sore and angry, and the anger would not fix anything. I have done that before. I have swallowed it and told myself to be good. Being good did not keep me from being erased. So I set that habit down like a broken tool and reached for a better one. I am good with time. Bread does not rise because you beg it. It rises because you fed it and gave it warmth and waited enough. I understand clocks. I started one that day in the gray light. I told myself that I would let the theft come all the way into the open, and then, at the exact minute I chose, I would show the work, not with rage, with evidence. With witnesses whose opinions matter to Emma. I did not need revenge to feel like fire. I needed it to feel like clean glass, transparent, sharp only if you try to grab it in the wrong way. While I prepared, I kept living a life that belonged to me. I tested in the mornings before the cafe opened. I saved videos of my hands at work with a clock in the frame. I labeled containers neatly because it is who I am. I asked Mrs. Patel to taste new trials and to say the date out loud while I filmed. She smiled and said my name like it mattered. That sound steadied me. I sent a simple note to a food writer named Ava. I had read her for years because she writes about craft and credit, not just flash. I invited her to the opening and said I was excited to see family food history in one room. I did not lie, that is what it was going to be. History is not always noble, it is just what happened. I also asked Mom to seat Victor, the lead investor, near the pass. I said it would make Emma happy to see his face when the first plates went out. That part was true. It also placed the person who held the purse next to the place where rules either live or die. Mom liked being helpful, especially if it would make Emma look good. She said she would handle the seating chart and sounded proud. I did not correct her reason. I simply thanked her and wrote the plan in the margin of my notebook. It felt like fitting the last piece in a clean row. If you think my calm means I did not feel much, you are wrong. I felt everything. I felt the sting of every dinner where my work was a backdrop for a show. I felt the ache of wanting to flip a table just to make a sound loud enough to be heard. I did not flip the table. I set a different one and wrote the guest list myself. When fear whispered that I was being cruel, I looked at the pages of my binder and reminded myself that I was not the one making a lie in public. I was the one making the truth easy to see. In the week before opening, the split between us became a picture I could not ignore. Emma stood in front of the mirror with a wine glass, practicing her smile and the pauses she wanted. She tried lines the way some people try on dresses. I sat at the kitchen table and sharpened a pencil. I wrote a shopping list for myself that had nothing to do with her party. I needed trays for my own small supper club, parchment paper, and a roll of labels that were easy to read. I would not be left with empty hands after the night. I would have my own work ready to serve. Mom and Dad did what they have always done. Mom talked about the sign and the photos. She asked what she should wear. She said, "This is a big night for our family," as if a photo could hold us together. Dad told me to be proud of my sister. He meant well. It always sounds kind when he says it, but it can feel like a quiet request for me to shrink so the picture will be smooth. I said, "I am proud of my work." He looked puzzled, like I had answered a different question. In our family, pride often belongs to the person on the stage. People in the kitchen are supposed to be grateful to be there. On some nights, I lay awake and replayed the old reels. The bake sale where Emma stood in front and I restocked the table. The time Dad told a neighbor that Emma was the creative one and I was the helper, and I stood there holding a bowl I had invented. The way Mom's eyes went shiny when Emma told a big story, as if praise were a kind of weather and Emma brought the sun. I wondered if they would ever see me. Then I decided it did not matter. I would make it impossible to ignore me because I would make the work clear. I would not shout, I would not beg, I would build a record anyone could follow. So when you saw me sit quiet on opening night with my hands folded and my heart slow, know this. That quiet was built over years. It came from a child at a table with a chipped blue bowl. It came from a teenager who started writing dates next to ideas. It came from a young woman who learned that a label is a promise. It came from a sister who watched another sister learn the wrong lesson about credit. It came from a cook who decided that the right room on the right night would serve the truth like a clear broth, nothing to hide, nothing heavy to swallow, only the clean taste of what is there. And yes, I chose that room on purpose. I wanted the investors there because money listens when it has something to lose. I wanted the food writer there because she listens for truth inside pretty stories. I wanted mom and dad there because they are part of the pattern, and if they were going to praise a sign with our name on it, they should see whose work made that name worth anything. I wanted cousin Cara there because she loves to film family events and she would not be able to help herself. I wanted the public relations manager to hover and the head chef to sweat and the guests to lift their phones. I wanted the room that Emma worships to turn and look. There is one more simple thing you need to know before we step back into that dining room. I like to feed people. I like to watch someone take a bite and close their eyes and then open them smiling. I want to keep that feeling for myself. I do not want it warped by a show. I do not want it bent into a story where someone else stands in the spotlight with my work in their hands. So when I chose to let the betrayal go live, it was not only to expose a lie. It was to make space for a life where I could feed people with my name on the menu and my name on the work, in rooms I chose, at tables I set, with care made visible. That is the ground I stood on when the door opened on opening night. That is the map of how we got here. I carried my notes, my calm, my memory of the blue bowl, and the knowledge that this time the room was not going to trick me. This time I had picked the room. This time, finally, the room would see me. And when it did, I would not gloat, I would not shout, I would do what I have always done. I would let the work speak and I would stand beside it with my name steady in my mouth. I did not confront Emma. I built a quiet machine and fed it proof. Every piece had to click with the next piece like gears under a clock face. People would watch the hands move on opening night, but they would not see the engine I made in the weeks before. I woke early, made coffee, and told myself the same line each morning: make the care visible, make the truth easy to follow. The first gear was simple: save everything. When Emma copied a file from our shared drive, I saved the version she copied and the version I wrote before she touched it. I kept both. I took screenshots with the date in view and printed them. I set a small kitchen timer so a clock sat in the corner of every video I made. I filmed my hands while I whisked, tasted, and plated, and I kept the stove clock in the frame so no one had to guess. I photographed each page of my recipe notebook beside that day's newspaper so the date was plain. The point was not drama, the point was order that a stranger could follow. I practiced staying quiet when Emma bragged in the family group chat. She wrote, working through my new sauce, and attached a photo of my pan. I did not argue. I replied, looks good, then emailed myself the original image with the date and time in the subject line. I would not let my proof live only in a place she could edit. I named my files in clear words: Campfire Crackle Test 4 Brown Sugar Version, May 12, 10:18 in the morning. I kept the names plain so an investor, a health inspector, or a neighbor could follow the steps and see whose work they were seeing. Mrs. Patel liked to help me. I asked if she would taste tests on camera. I told her why. She said yes and sat at my small table with her hair pinned back and her hands folded. She tasted 3 versions of a peach top, said which one cracked the best, and then spoke the date out loud. We laughed when the sugar shattered under her spoon and she said, "That sound is your signature." I saved that video in 3 places. Later, I printed a still frame and taped it to the inside cover of my binder. When fear tried to talk me out of my plan, I opened the cover and looked at her smile. I also needed numbers. Cost sheets make some people yawn, but they tell a story in steady lines. I built one for each dish. How much butter, how much fruit, how much time. I wrote my initials at the bottom and the date at the top. I emailed a copy to myself and saved another in a folder titled Bennett Provisions. That was the name I chose for the business I had already filed as a limited liability company. I liked the word provisions. It sounded like care packed into a bag you can carry through the world. Filing the company was not about a show, it was about standing on solid ground. I met with a lawyer named Maya in a small office with a plant in the window and a bowl of wrapped candies on the desk. I told her what I was building and that I wanted to license my dishes in clear terms if anyone wanted to use them. She nodded, took notes, and said, "We can do that." She filed the limited liability company, set up a simple operating agreement, and drafted a license template that said in plain language that if someone wanted to use my recipes and my dish names in a restaurant, they would sign for it and pay for it. I also filed brand applications for the names that mattered. I did not file for every dish, only the ones I knew Emma could not resist using: Campfire Crackle, Brown Butter Hiss, Garden Steps Salad. I filed a brand application for my supper club name too. I wanted those names to live on paper with my name beside them so that, if anyone tried to argue in public, the records would speak in calm voices louder than mine. Filing a form is not romantic, but it is how you make a claim people can see. The next gear was design. If you want the room to turn toward the truth, you have to give the room a reason to look. I designed table cards that matched Emma's branding. Soft cream paper, clean serif letters, a tiny vine. I visited Louis at the print shop on the corner. He helped me choose a weight of paper that felt like a promise. He ran his finger along the proof and said, "These look expensive." I said, "They need to look like they belong, but they also need to do a second job." The second job hid in the vine. I placed a tiny quick response code inside the curl of a leaf. It was so small you would miss it unless your phone camera found it. The link did not go live right away. I scheduled it to activate at 7:15 in the evening on opening night. Not 7, not 7:30, 7:15. That would be after the toast, after the first plates hit the pass, after the first story grew roots, and right when the room settled into the idea that the night belonged to Emma. At that minute, anyone who scanned the card would land on an archive I built with care. The first page showed 3 short videos with dates in the corner as I tested, plated, and named the dishes. The second page showed my cost sheets, simple and clean, with my initials and dates. The third page showed the brand filings in my name. The fourth page showed a waitlist for my supper club, now about the decoy notes. I would not harm anyone for proof. Food safety is not a joke. People trust us when they eat what we put on a plate. I would never break that trust. But I knew that Emma's kitchen was sloppy with paperwork. The head chef, Marco, hated lists. He liked heat, speed, and swagger. He believed that his eyes could measure temperature and time. The rules bored him. I wrote a set of helpful prep notes and uploaded them to the shared drive. They looked like my usual checklists, but they left out the parts that saved a kitchen from citations. No reminder to label containers, no cooling log line, no allergen cards for the pass. They were not dangerous if a cook used common sense. They were only against the rules that kitchens are supposed to live by. I watched how the staff used the notes. When Marco printed the page and taped it to the wall, I did not smile. I felt the ache of wishing he would be better at a job that demands care. He skipped labels on clear tubs. He told a new cook to just set it in the walk-in refrigerator. He rolled his eyes when a server asked about allergens. I wrote the times he did those things in the margin of my own notebook. I also wrote, "Label everything twice in my kitchen." The trap was not only for the room that night, it was also a mirror for me. I would not build a life that made the same mess. The health inspection was a delicate choice. I did not want to be cruel. I wanted to make the truth visible to the people who cared most about Emma's show. Her investors, her public relations manager, the food writer, and our family. I went on the city website and read the rules again, the same rules I had learned in the cafe. Cooling logs must show times and temperatures. Containers must be labeled. Allergen information must be present at the pass. I called the hotline and spoke in a calm voice. I described what I had seen: containers without labels, no allergen cards, and cooling trays without a log. I gave them the time of the grand opening and asked if a visit that night was possible. I did not mention my name. I did not mention my sister. I named only the rules and the address. Timing is the only real magic I believe in. You cannot manufacture luck, but you can build a moment. I built this one in small circles. I asked Mom to seat Victor, the lead investor, near the pass and to put Dad and her next to him. I told her he should see the energy of the kitchen. She liked the idea because it sounded like a photo someone might run in a paper. I asked cousin Cara to film the first toast for Grandma. She loves to record family moments. She set a reminder in her phone. I invited a food writer named Ava with a calm note that said, "I am excited to see family food history in one room." I wanted eyes in the room that would notice craft and credit, not just a shiny sign. I also tested my own face. It sounds strange, but I sat in front of a mirror and practiced a plain look. No smirk, no gloat, no pleading, just steady eyes and a calm mouth. I practiced saying one line. "Supper Club opens Friday." I said it until it felt like water. I did not write a speech. I wrote lists. I wrote times and names and simple steps. I kept a card in my purse that said, "Stay quiet, breathe. Let the room work." On the back it said, "Offer a card if asked, do not chase." I read that card in the morning and again before bed. The twist lived on a different path. Emma had bought a domain name for her restaurant, and her public relations manager had printed it on everything. I bought the same name with a different top-level domain. I built a page that looked like a clean white room with my supper club name in the center. I set it to redirect to my archive at 7:15 on opening night. If anyone typed the restaurant name wrong by one small dot, they would land on my page and see my work. I did not do this to be petty. I did this because I understand how people search when they hear a rumor at a table. I also scheduled a post for my supper club page that would go live at 7:15. It showed a photo of me and Mr. Liang, the owner of a small commissary kitchen, standing by a stainless steel table with a signed lease on it. We smiled like people who had work to do. The caption was simple. "Bennett Provisions Supper Club opens Friday. All recipes and names by Kimberly Bennett. Limited seats." I kept the tone warm, not sharp. I wanted people to feel invited, not dragged into a fight. If a person liked what they saw in the archive, they could click once and place their name on a list for dinner. There was one more piece I built with care because I knew money would make the room pay attention. I met Victor for coffee a week before opening with Mom's help. She thought I wanted his advice on my career. In a way, I did. We sat by the window. I brought a small folder with my license template and the cost sheets for the 3 dishes Emma could not resist. I told him I believed in clear credit and clean paper. I said that if any restaurant, including my sister's, wanted to use my recipes and my names, the path was simple. Sign the license, pay a fair fee, and use the names the right way. He read the page, nodded, and said he liked simple paths. He did not commit to anything in that booth. He did not have to. He heard what he needed to hear. On my side of the street, I kept building a kitchen that would not make the same mistakes. Mr. Liang showed me the room I could rent on Fridays. It smelled like bleach and onions. I liked it. I bought a label maker that printed clear letters. I wrote the allergen list for each dish I planned to serve. I printed cooling logs that reminded a tired cook to write the time and to use an ice bath. I taught Tasha, my friend who would help me serve, how to use the thermometer and why we never guess. I made a small binder for her with tabs that said label, allergen, cooling, and open. I wanted care to be visible to the next person, not only to me. Building the archive took longer than I thought because I wanted it to speak even if I disappeared. I wrote simple captions under each video. Kimberly Bennett testing campfire crackle, May 12, 10:18 in the morning. Cost sheet for garden steps salad, all weights listed by gram, dated June 4. Brand application receipt for brown butter hiss, filed June 10 in my name. I kept the colors soft. No flashing lights, no rage, just a clean table of contents and 4 pages that a person could scroll in a dining room while their plate cooled. I did not tell Mom and Dad about any of this. I kept our talks simple. Mom wanted to know what she should wear on opening night. I told her she looked good in blue. Dad asked if I would sit with them. I said I might move around to say hello to friends. Both answers were true. Both answers kept me from walking them through the trap. I was not trying to make them feel foolish. I was trying to stop a pattern that had cost me years. If they learned something that night, it would be because the room taught it, not because I won a fight at the kitchen table. Some nights I wavered. I thought about calling Emma and begging her to stop. I thought about telling her that I did not want to hurt her. Both thoughts were real. Then I pictured her standing with a glass in her hand, saying my words in her voice, and I remembered that my feelings had not stopped her before. She did not stop when I cried. She stopped only when a room told her to stop. So I chose the room, I chose a clock, I set the minute, I set the light, I set the witnesses. I set the proof in a neat line that would unfold in front of the people she most wanted to impress. The last week was practice and polish. I walked by the restaurant at different hours and watched the staff unload boxes. I saw a pallet of clear containers and thought of all the labels they would not wear. I saw Marco smoke by the back door and flip through his phone. I looked in at the pass and saw a clean counter waiting to become a mess. I kept my face smooth and my eyes soft. I did not want anyone to feel hunted. I wanted my own chest to stay quiet. I made a small map of the dining room from memory and marked where I would sit, not too close to the pass. Not too far from the door, near a wall so I could watch without turning my head. I practiced the small movements in my mind. Set card on linen, breathe in, breathe out. If approached, say one line. If asked for more, hand a card. If someone tried to argue, I would say, "The archive has all the details," and return to silence. I knew I could be pulled into a shouting match if I let myself. I have a temper like anyone else. I did not plan a fight. I planned a display. I also checked my own kitchen again. I labeled every tub. I wrote the allergen cards in large print so no one needed to squint. I set a timer for the cooling logs so I would not forget in the rush. I clicked the thermometer on and off to hear the small beep. I did these things to calm myself. Making care visible is not only for other people, it helps me breathe. It reminds me who I am when the room is loud. On the morning of opening day, I woke before the sun. I made oatmeal and ate it slowly. I watered the plant on my windowsill. I set my phone on the table and read through the archive one more time like a guest might. I clicked the links. I watched the short clips. I adjusted one caption to make it clearer. I tested the quick response code on a proof card by holding my phone over it from an angle like a person would in a dining room. The link stayed dark as it should. The schedule was set for that night. Before I left my apartment, I checked the twist again. The second domain was set to redirect at 7:15. My supper club post was scheduled for the same minute. The photo of me and Mr. Liang made me smile because it looked like the future I wanted. Stainless steel, clean floors, labels, and my name above the sink on a small sign that read, "Wash, rinse, sanitize, air dry." I like signs that tell the truth. They sound plain to some people, they sound like safety to me. I arrived at the restaurant early. I stood a street away and watched people go in. Emma's public relations manager fluttered like a small bird in a bright dress. The head chef barked at a line cook. Mom adjusted her necklace. Dad checked his watch. Victor laughed with a friend and then moved to his table by the pass just where I had hoped. Cousin Kara pulled a small camera from her bag and checked the battery. The room filled with the people who mattered to Emma. That was the point. I wanted them to see, not just hear. I walked in with a small smile for the host. I handed over my name. He beamed and said they were so happy I could make it. Years ago, that line would have made me feel like a guest in my own life. It did not now. I found my seat near the wall. I set my bag on the floor and my small box of cards on the chair beside me. I looked around and took in the corners and the light. This was a perfect room for a show. It would be a perfect room for proof. While I waited, I wrote in my notebook a simple line, "Trust the plan." I drew a small square and wrote 7:15 in it. I circled it. I closed the book. I pressed my hand on it and felt the thick cover under my palm. The urge to explain rose and fell like a wave that finally found a shore. I do not hate my sister. I hate what the room taught her. Tonight I was going to teach the room something, and in teaching the room I was going to teach her too. The room settles into warm gold as the lights dip for the first toast. Heat from the stoves breathes through the doorway. Knives flash once and then rest. I chose a seat by the wall where I can see the door and the pass without turning my head. My hands lie flat on the linen, my pulse keeps a steady count. I could pass for any guest who came to clap. I did not come to clap. Emma steps onto a small platform beside the pass and lifts her glass. Her white dress gathers the light and returns it to the room. The public relations manager stands at her elbow with a fixed smile. Marco, the head chef, wipes the counter and calls a number to the line. The pass shines like a stage set for a show. Friends, family, partners, Emma says, voice sweet and sure. This night is years in the making. She tips her glass toward Mom and Dad. They glow like people who have waited for a door to open and finally hear the hinge move. Mom dabs at her eye, Dad takes her hand. I look at them and feel a small ache that is no longer sharp. They have always loved the person under the light. They never learned to look toward the stove. Menus land like gifts. The paper is heavy. The letters stand up tall. I know the names well enough to say them blind, but I read them anyway to be certain. Brown butter hiss, garden steps salad, campfire crackle. Each name sits in a tidy line with a clean sentence beneath. Emma begins her stories. When I was a girl, she says, I would sneak peaches from a bowl and stand at the sink listening to the night. She points to the dessert section. I call this campfire crackle because the top breaks like thin ice. Soft laughter ripples through the room. It is a good line. I wrote it one winter when the sugar cooled too fast and snapped under my spoon. I let the words pass over me like steam from a pot I am not stirring tonight. Victor, the lead investor, sits near the pass with his jacket off and his tie loose. He watches the kitchen the way a person watches a field they planted. The public relations manager glances at him and relaxes a fraction. Across the room, Cousin Kara checks her camera and steadies it. She catches my eye and gives a small grin. I return a small smile that says I am fine. Keep rolling. Ava, the food writer, sits 2 tables away with a slim notebook and a pen on the linen. She does not lift her phone. She watches the people, the plates, and the space between them. When a server sets an unlabeled clear tub on the pass, she tilts her head the way a bird tilts its head at a dropped crumb. She writes one word I cannot see and returns to the room with an even face. Emma moves down the page. This salad tastes like stepping through the garden after rain, she says. You can hear the mint wake up in your hands. She glances at her own fingers when she says it. She never picked the mint. I did. For the noodles, she says, you wait for the pan to sing. The sauce tells you when to stop. She holds the air for the beat that brings applause. The room gives it on cue. Mom leans toward Dad and murmurs, she's a star. Dad shakes his head and says, proud of you girls, to no one in particular. I let their words float like balloons I do not need to catch. I rub my thumb along the table card until I feel the raised ink of the tiny vine. Inside that curl lies the small square that will wake on my signal. The first plates land, the pass wakes up for real. Marco calls an order and slides a tray forward. A server asks for allergen cards because a guest has a peanut allergy. Marco waves a hand. We have it in the notes, he says and turns back to the stove. No card appears. The server hesitates and then moves on because the room is loud and the line is long and the tray in her hands feels heavy. I take the scene like a photo and set it with the others. A server sets a small plate in front of me from the kitchen with love. The noodles shine. The sauce smells like brown butter and toast. I take one bite and know the cook pulled the pan a moment too soon. The taste is almost there and almost is a promise that never learned how to keep itself. I set the fork down. This is not my meal, this is my clock. Victor rises for a short toast. He thanks the team, praises the room, and says he looks forward to a long run. He sits and checks his phone. The screen lights his face. He is a man who reads signals. Bodies press closer as the room fills. Heat from the stoves pushes into the dining room. Laughter runs along the tables like ribbon. Kara's camera light blinks and goes dark. She mouths, almost time. I lift my eyes to the clock. The minute hand slides toward the number I chose weeks ago with a pen in my hand. A sweet urge to stand and speak lifts and fades. I remind myself of the card in my purse. Stay quiet, breathe, let the room work. Ava leans toward her date and whispers. He follows her eyes to the pass. The public relations manager skims the room and glances at the door, maybe hoping for a surprise guest. Another kind of surprise is coming. In the kitchen, a tray of peaches waits under the lamp. The sugar shines. I can tell it was sprinkled too soon. The top will crack, but the fruit beneath will weep. Mom catches my eye and taps her chest. I nod and tap my own. She mouths, "Proud of you." She means she is proud that I came. She does not know she is sitting inside a story that will tip in a minute. I give her an easy smile so she will not brace before the turn. I am not here to scare her. I am here to end a pattern that made us both smaller than we had to be. Orders stack. The pass grows crowded. Marco barks again. A line cook reaches into a tub with a gloved hand, wipes the glove on a towel, and keeps moving. It is not a danger to the guest tonight, but it is a mirror that shows a kitchen that treats rules like a costume for photos. I let my frustration rise and fall. I press my feet flat and feel the ground hold me up. I check my watch, 7:14. The number looks like a door about to open. I think of the days that led to this minute, the blue bowl when I was 10, the first notebook, the binders with tabs, the forms with my name, the careful print on the table cards, the quiet page that waits to open when I say so. None of it needed drama, all of it needed steady hands. Emma lifts her glass again to thank everyone for their faith. She shines, the room lifts its glasses, the clink travels around the room like a loop of ice. I press 2 fingers to the table card and then lift my hand away. I will not rush. The minute is walking toward me with calm steps. I can meet it without moving. The server who brought my water returns. "Do you need anything else?" she asks. "No, thank you," I say. My voice sounds level, like a table that does not wobble no matter where you set your weight. She smiles and slips away. I slide my business cards closer to the edge. The edges feel like decisions I made long ago. A thin draft brushes the back of my neck. The door is about to open. I do not look at it yet. I look at the people I chose to witness the turn. Ava sets her pen down and watches the pass with her hands folded. Victor places his phone face down. Mom leans toward Dad. Dad leans toward Mom. The public relations manager smooths her dress and keeps her smile. Emma looks out at the room as if she owns the light. The show holds its breath for one last quiet beat. 7:15 lands like a soft click inside my chest. The hinge turns. The door opens. The door opens and the air changes. 2 inspectors walk in with quiet steps, badges shown, pens ready. One heads for the pass without a pause. The other nods at the host and follows. The room tilts toward them like iron to a magnet. I stay still, hands on linen. Breath even, Emma keeps her glass raised as if the pose can freeze the night. The public relations manager smiles a trained smile. "Welcome, cooling logs, allergen cards, labels," the lead inspector says, not rude, not soft. A list that is a map. Marco, the head chef, tries to outrun the moment. He calls a ticket, reaches for a clear tub. The inspector turns it with 2 fingers, no label. "When was this prepped?" "This afternoon." "Logged where?" A blank clipboard answers. Her pen moves. Servers glance at one another, waiting for a cue that will not come. One asks, "Do you want allergen cards posted at the pass?" "Yes," the inspector says. "Now." The walk-in refrigerator door opens. Cold air rolls out. The inspector reads shelves with her eyes. "Who cooled this? Where is the time and temperature record?" A young cook says, "We did not set the log yet." Another line of ink. The sound is not loud, it is steady. Drip, drip, drip. At the corner table, Victor, the lead investor, leans back and watches like a man timing a machine. Mom sits taller. Dad smooths his napkin. Cousin Cara lifts her camera. Ava, the food writer, watches faces, then the pass, then her notebook. The assistant inspector tapes a notice to the front glass, smoothing edges with care. The letters face the sidewalk and the room. 13 health violations, not a shout, a sign. Phones rise, that is the minute I built. 7:15. The tiny quick response code hidden in each table card's vine wakes. Guests scan to pass the wait. Screens fill with my kitchen in morning light, a clock in the corner, my hands whisk. My voice says, pan sings now. Stop. Swipe, hands in mint, no knife so the bruises do not show. Swipe, peaches under heat until the top turns glass and cracks under a spoon. Mrs. Patel laughs, dates anchor each frame. People scroll down, cost sheets with my initials, brand filings with my name. A sentence, to license these recipes and names, contact Kimberly Bennett. The form is plain, name, company, why no flames, only tabs, the room hums shifts. Some tilt screens for strangers, some look at me, the quiet woman by the wall, then back at their phones to check if the hands match. Ava scans, studies, writes one word, nods. Emma taps a fork to glass. Friends, she says, pressing on the show, we are honored, cooling log, the inspector says to Marco. The words cut clean, attention slides back to the pass. A man in a gray blazer lifts a card. Scan this, he tells his table. A beat later, these are her dishes. Not my name, not yet, her like a landmark finally noticed. Victor stands and meets Emma with his phone in hand. Who wrote your menu, he asks. My team, she says, he turns the screen. Kimberly wrote it, did she license it to you? He is even, not angry, he is asking the room to match paper to truth. I slide a business card forward, I do not stand. I wrote them, I say. If you need to use my recipes and names, I license my work. Victor nods once. Then funding is conditional on licensing from Kimberly, effective now. The sentence lands and changes the weight in the room the way a tide turns. The public relations manager signals to a junior staffer. He types the restaurant name into his phone. If he misses the dot by one spot, he lands on my supper club page, which now redirects to the archive. Even if he does not, the table cards carry the link on every cloth. At the door, some guests leave, quiet and careful, napkins folded beside full glasses. Others stay because they want to see how truth works when it is not shouted. Mom looks at me, not angry, only awake. Dad does not move. For once they do not rush to hold up the loudest voice. Marco steadies his hands on the counter. We have house standards, he tries. The inspector points at the posted city standards. Use those. A server tapes up a handwritten allergen card. It is too late to erase the count. It is not too late to learn. I turn my head to Ava. Supper club opens Friday, I say, the one line I rehearsed so it would come out clean. I saw, she says, clean work, I nod, clean carries. A woman at the next table leans closer. So it was you, I wrote them. The proof is on the page, she nods. Good, not a cheer, a verdict. A floor manager comes to my table with a polite wall. Miss Bennett, could we speak outside? No, thank you, I say. Everything you need is in the archive. If your team wants to license my work, the form is simple. He waits for Habit to lift me. Habit does not. He goes. The assistant inspector returns. Notice posted, 13 citations tonight, she says. Phones photograph the paper on the door, not to mock, to remember. Modern memory likes a picture. Outside, a woman in a red coat calls someone and says, a mess, and there is a link with receipts. She laughs, not cruel. People love a turn, mine is measured, a page opening on time. Victor sits, types, stands again, he crosses to my table. Send the license, he says. If it is not signed, we are done. Understood, I say, we do not shake. The room heard it. The public relations manager climbs a step. A complimentary glass while we sort a documentation delay, she calls. The pour is fast, the scroll is faster. Guests watch my hands move on their screens while the wine catches light on their tables. Emma comes. Up close I can see a small smear on her dress from a pan. You did this, she says. You set me up. I hold her eyes. I let you do it in public, I say. I made the care visible. She breathes in for a fight and stops when the inspector asks for one more log and the room turns again. She is no longer the loudest thing here. Mom's hand finds Dad's hand. She does not hush me. She does not give Emma a line. She looks at the past the way a person finally reads a sign that has hung on the wall for years. Dad's jaw sets. He is not used to choosing silence. It suits him. Ava walks the room once, photographing absence, the space where allergen cards should be, the blank clipboard, then the small presence that changed the night, a table card with a tiny vine where a square hides. She sits and writes long lines. She does not chase faces. She follows facts. The hum of the room resets. Service slows. Some ask for checks. Some stay for the lesson. It is not chaos. It is a slow, clean fall of truth. A server brings me water and says, "I am sorry." I say, "You did your best." I tip her well. Nights like this crush the people who did not set the tone. On the sidewalk, photos of the notice appear with the caption, "Rough opening." Under one, someone shares my archive link and writes, "Context. I did not ask." Proof travels on its own feet. Emma gathers a small ring of investors by the bar. She talks about tightening documentation, training, moving forward. She does not say my name. The cards do, the filings do. The videos do in my voice. I slip my box of cards into my bag. I stand when my check arrives. I cross to Mom and Dad. "I will talk to you later," I say. Mom squeezes my fingers. "We will come Friday," she says. This time I believe her. Dad nods like a man finding true north on a compass that has spun for years. At the door I pause and read the paper as any guest would. 13 health violations. It is not a weapon to me. It is a sign like wash hands. Rules keep strangers safe. I like signs that do that. Night air cools my face. My phone buzzes. The scheduled post is live. Me and Mr. Liang in a clean kitchen with a signed lease on the table. Bennett Provisions Supper Club opens Friday, the caption says. All recipes and names by Kimberly Bennett. Seats start to fall like ripe fruit. Behind me, the inspectors leave with measured steps. Staff tape up printed allergen cards. The public relations manager talks into a phone, voice a little too high. Through the window, a couple lifts their glasses toward me without meaning to send a signal. I lift a hand back and keep walking. Ava falls in beside me for a half block. Measured, she says. No shouting, no shouting, I say. Send dates. I will. She turns back. She has a deadline, so do I. I reach the corner and wait for the light. Cars hiss by, a bus sighs. The city does not stop for anyone's story. I cross. I do not look back. The room can keep learning without me. At home, I set my bag down, wash my hands, and put the kettle on. I open my refrigerator and touch labels as if greeting friends. Dates, times, clear letters. A cooling log clipped to the door with a pen tied to a string so no one can say they could not find a pen. These small things look dull to people who love the show. They are how I love strangers. Messages arrive. Tasha, waitlist exploding. Mrs. Patel, proud of you. I told you to put your name on your work. Victor's assistant. Please send license. I reply with calm words and attach the file Maya wrote. I do not float, I do not spike, I ground. I think about the chipped blue bowl from our childhood table. I see my hands sticky with sugar and a story being told by someone who did not make the bowl sing. Tonight I did not shout over that old story. I turned on the light and let the room see the work. I drink tea by the window and watch a couple carry a paper bag with a loaf end sticking out. A bike squeaks past. My phone lights again, seats gone for opening, add second date, I smile. Yes, I type. I set a reminder to print more allergen cards and to buy another roll of labels. Before bed, I slide one more page into my binder, the tiny timeline with a check mark next to 7:15. Under it I write, "The room learned." I close the cover and feel the weight in my hands. I turn off the light and stand for a moment in the quiet. No stage, no applause. Just a clean kitchen in my mind, a long table and people eating food with my name on it. That is enough for me. The night ended, but the lesson did not. I woke to a quiet apartment, boiled water, and opened my binder like a ledger. I was not looking for victory, I was looking for order. Who needed answers, who needed boundaries, who needed receipts. I wrote 3 short lists. Emma wrote first, before sunrise. "You humiliated me," she typed. The rest was blame. I read it once and set the phone face down. When I replied, I used full sentences and no heat. "I will license my recipes and dish names if you choose to use them." The terms are on the first page of the agreement. The fee is fair. If you do not license them, do not use them. I did not add comfort to a message that did not ask for it, Victor's assistant wrote next. Please send the license and a list of covered dishes. I replied with the agreement Maya had drafted and a short note listing the 3 names from opening night. I added, any new recipe of mine will be proposed by email with dates and costs and will require written acceptance. A minute later, Victor wrote, understood, a small word. It rebalanced years of noise. At 7, the health department email landed, reinspection scheduled, fees due, items to correct, cooling logs, labels, allergen cards. I did not cheer. I made a plan to be elsewhere so the staff could clean and learn without my shadow. This was a kitchen that owed strangers safety. By noon, I was in Maya's office. She read my notes and tightened the license so a busy person could not pretend to be confused. Short sentences remove excuses, she said. She added a clause that public credit must match the paper, menus, websites, and press would list recipes and dish names by Kimberly Bennett. That line did not feel like a trophy. It felt like a label on a jar. That afternoon, I called the bank and set payment alerts, then built a plain invoice that matched the license. Due dates, fair late fee, dish titles, clear words carry the load. In the evening, I called Mom and Dad. I did not want them to hear my rules from a cousin or a post online. They answered on speaker, voices soft. I said, I will not debate history. I let that sit. Then I said, if you come to my supper club, you are welcome. If you talk about my work, use my name. If you say we, it will be because the paper says we. Mom took a long breath. We will come Friday, she said. We will use your name, Dad said. I am proud of your work. It was the first time he ended the sentence there. Ava's article went up the next morning. She did not slam anyone. She described a room that loved a show, a pass that needed labels, a paper on the door, and links that showed dated work. Authorship is craft and record, not volume, she wrote, comments stacked. Give credit, follow rules, pay people. The chorus felt like clean air after a long shift. The waitlist for my supper club crossed into 3 digits by lunch. Tasha and I met at the commissary kitchen with Mr. Liang, who handed us the keys. We set stations, labeled tubs, taped allergen cards, and printed cooling logs. I showed Tasha my habit of placing the thermometer and the pen where the hand will reach without thinking. I do not want clever, I said. I want repeatable. She grinned. We built the first week's menu around dishes that fit the room and the budget. I priced each plate with a pencil and nudged the numbers until the math and my sense both said yes. A plate can lie if the price hides the work. I made the cost sheet visible so the person who ate could trust that the care started long before the sauce met heat. 2 days after opening night, Emma called. Her voice was smaller and therefore more honest. Send the license again, she said. I cannot find it. I sent it within the minute. She signed the next morning and wired the first fee that afternoon. Seeing the names stacked under my name did not make me giddy. It made me even. Victor wrote a second note. We will fund the next phase after reinspection and proof of staff training. Include a photo of allergen cards. Emma said she would schedule training. I sent her a copy of my checklist in case it helped. On Friday, Mom and Dad arrived for our first supper club night. They stood in the doorway like people stepping into a room that did not need them to hold up the beams. The room smelled of lemon and bleach. I walked them to their seats and handed them menus that said recipes and dish names by Kimberly Bennett at the bottom. Dad ran his thumb over the line. You did this, he said. Yes, I said. We are proud of your work, Mom said. Neighbors came. Mr. Liang sat by the door. Mrs. Patel hugged me and held me at arm's length. There you are, she said. I told you so. Ava arrived and took photos of the allergen cards, the labels, and the clean pass. You can feel the care, she said. People will taste it. Service ran like a clear stream. We hit our times, we wrote our logs. When a guest asked about a nut allergy, Tasha did not guess. She read the card and returned with a clear answer. The guest smiled the way a person smiles when they feel safe. By the end of the night, we had enough to buy another label roll and a second thermometer. In the second week, the restaurant passed re-inspection. Emma posted a note about learning and moving forward. She did not mention me. She did not have to, the menus did, the website did, the investors had paper, the staff had checklists. If she kept her promises, our city would get 2 good places to eat and my name would travel attached to the work that belonged to me. A cousin called me cold. I wrote back, I am not cold, I am clear. I did not try to win her. I kept building Bennett provisions the way I build a sauce, with heat and patience and a spoon that does not stop moving. I hired a dishwasher and paid on time. I printed a pocket handbook. It said, we label, we log, we ask, we give credit by name. I spoke those lines before every service. Tasha added, we breathe when it is loud. We all breathed. Weeks later, I walked past Emma's place on a slow Tuesday. Through the window, I saw cards at the pass and names on prep tubs. A server filled out a cooling log. Strangers ate and talked and were safe. I did not feel triumph. I felt relief. After our own service that night, I sat with Tasha and did the books. The numbers were simple and honest. We had enough to replace a pan, pay the cleaner for an extra day, and set a little aside for when the oven would need a part. I wrote those lines in the ledger and underlined them. Before I turned off the lights, I wrote on the whiteboard, control can be a kindness when you use it to make care visible. I locked the door and stepped into the quiet street. The sign above me did not flash. It did not need to. My name was printed where it belonged. In the end, Emma kept some distance. We text about training, invoices, and the few new dishes she wants to license. We do not text about the chipped blue bowl. That is fine. I did not set out to fix a family. I set out to fix the part that kept stealing my name. That part is fixed. I sleep well now. When I wake, I make coffee and open my binder, not to hunt for proof but to plan menus. The wound of being erased did not vanish. It stopped running the kitchen. I run the kitchen. The room that once taught me I was invisible now has to read my name out loud. And when I feed people, which is all I ever wanted to do, I do it without shrinking. That is the power I wanted. To stand next to my work and let it speak while I breathe, salt the water, and write the date on the label, clear as glass, permanent as ink. People think revenge feels like fire. Mine felt like clean glass. I could see through it. I could see myself on the other side, steady, not begging, not loud. I did not chase pain, I chased proof. I wanted the truth to stand without my voice holding it up. I learned that the slow way. As a kid, I thought fairness meant saying what happened until people believed me. It never worked. The loudest person took the mic and the room nodded along. When Emma told my stories in her voice, the room cheered because the room liked the show. I stopped asking the room to change its taste. I changed what the room saw. That choice was not cold, it was careful. I did not warn Emma because warning was the old game. Warnings turn into arguments and arguments turn into more performance. The room claps and nothing changes. I wanted one quiet minute where the paper, the dates, and the work spoke at the same time. I wanted the right witnesses, the ones who set furniture in our city, investors, writers, neighbors, and yes, Mom and Dad. If they saw the truth, the furniture would move. It did. Letting the theft go live was the hardest part. Every nerve wanted to stop the train before it reached the station, but stopping it in private would have kept the old pattern in place. The point was not to spare feelings. The point was to end erasure as a family habit. I wanted Emma to learn that credit is not a favor and care is not optional. When the inspector's pen moved, when the links opened, when Victor said funding would follow my license, the lesson landed where it needed to land. Not on my face, on the stage she chose. I do not hate my sister. I hate what we were all trained to praise. We were fed on applause and told that a name is earned by volume. I was told to be helpful and invisible. She was told to be bright and brave. We were both shorted. Now I am building a different house. In my house, the person who touches the food last does not own the story by default. The person who did the work gets their name on the page. That is not cruelty, that is balance. Some people asked if I planned the inspection to shame Emma. I did not. I planned it to protect strangers and to teach a room that safety is not a slogan. The rules are not there to make cooks suffer. They are there so the smallest kid at the table can eat without fear. If posting a notice in a window is what it took for a kitchen to respect labels and logs, then the notice was a mercy. Since that night, both kitchens use cards and logs. That is not gossip, that is care made visible. A label is not a sticker, it is a promise. A cooling log is not a chore, it is a record that keeps a stranger safe. A license is not a weapon. It is a path that pays the person who built the thing you want to use. These tools gave me a way to speak in rooms that never wanted to hear me. I do not need to outshout anyone if my systems are louder than opinion. Power, the kind I want, is quiet and repeatable. It is a habit you can teach. In my kitchen we say, we label, we log, we ask, we give credit by name. We breathe when it is loud, we salt the water, we set timers, we check again. None of that makes a big show, it makes good dinner, it makes good sleep. Do I feel sorry for Emma? No, I feel responsible for my side of the fence. I will not move the fence again to keep peace that costs my name. If she wants my work, she pays the fee and prints the credit. If she wants to cook her own work, I hope she does it well and safely. I want our city to have more good food, not less. I also want quiet girls who keep notebooks to see a path that does not ask them to turn into someone else to be seen. If I could speak to my younger self, the one holding the chipped blue bowl, I would say, keep the notes, learn the rules, and choose your room. Do not waste your breath arguing with a performance. Build a page that reads itself. Invite the right witnesses. Let the moment land once in public and then move on with your work. You do not need anyone to clap to be real. You need your name on your work and your work in a clean kitchen. That is enough. The week after the opening, people asked why I was so calm. I had already cried the year before. I cried when I saw my names posted without me. I cried when Dad called us the girls again like we were one body with one voice. I cried in Maya's office when we filed the forms because putting my name on paper felt like asking to exist. By the time the door opened and the notice went up, I did not have tears left. I had a plan. Plans clear the fog. They put the ground under your feet. Making room for myself did not push anyone else off the map. It drew lines where there were none. Mom still gets to dress up and glow. Dad still gets to toast. Investors still get returns. Guests still get dinner. The change is that I stand next to my work with my name steady in the light. I am not an echo in someone else's story. I am the voice that the paper repeats. Some wanted a louder ending. They wanted me to flip a table, break a plate, shout a speech. That might be satisfying for a clip, but it fades. What holds is the quiet shift after the speech would be over. Menus changed. A license was signed. A kitchen learned to label and log. A supper club opened with a clean pass and sold seats. Mom and Dad learned to say, "We are proud of your work," and stop there. Those are permanent things. They make a life, not a scene. So here is my claim, said once and then put into practice. My name belongs with my work. My calm is not silence, it is control. I am not here to punish. I am here to set terms and keep them. If someone uses what I build, they will use it by agreement or not at all. If someone sits at my table, they will be safe because the care is visible. If someone tries to remove my name again, the receipts are already printed. I will not chase. I will not plead. I will point to the page and go back to the stove. I do not believe in lucky breaks. I believe in clocks, lists, and the right witnesses. I believe in small rules honored 1,000 times. I believe in choosing the room and the minute and then letting the room teach what words cannot. That is how a quiet person takes her place without borrowing anyone else's volume. This is the last thing I will say about that night. I did not take Emma's voice. I took back mine. I put it on paper and set it in the light. Now when I feed people, the taste they remember is the food and the feeling of being cared for. The name they remember is mine because it is printed where it belongs. I am not asking for applause. I am setting the table. Bring your hunger, bring your respect. The rest is written, dated, labeled, and ready to serve. Tell me where you are listening from and share your family power story in the comments. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Watch the next video to see how timing and proof can change a room.